Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Tan, and today I'll be giving my presentation on the outcome of my new learning project involving ICT into the classroom. This placement, I was put into a primary school and I was teaching the foundation class, and the topic that I was teaching them was a topic about shapes as well as solids, and this was a numeracy class. According to the curriculum, the students were required to be able to, number one, sort and describe and name familiar two-dimensional shapes and three-dimensional objects in the environment. And number two, to be able to recognize and classify two-dimensional shapes and three-dimensional objects according to their obvious features. The learning intentions of the students was to be able to distinguish between the different shapes by learning to identify their specific characteristics and to be able to do the same for the solids as well. For example, the students need to be able to know that squares have 4 equal sides and 4 corners as well, while circles had only one side. Triangles had 3 sides and 3 corners, but they did not need to be equal, and rectangles that had 2 long sides and 2 short sides. As this was a foundation classroom, a lot of the students' learning was based around inquiry-based learning, asking relevant questions in a way that can spark and draw out the skill and understanding of the students. For the first lesson, it covered the topic of squares and circles. Incorporating ICT was in the form of the interactive whiteboard, or IWB for short. The way this was used was that it displayed simple songs for the students that talked about the shapes and their characteristics. Afterwards, during these lessons, we made posters for both the circle and the squares. On each poster, it displayed the name, its characteristics, and what it resembles. Important aspects that the students needed to remember were that all sides of the squares were even, and that circles had one side running all the way around. After spending some time making the posters, they spent some time doing small activities to help them remember the different shapes. For the second lesson, we had continued the theme of using ICT by using the interactive whiteboard, again to explain triangles and rectangles with the use of songs. We reviewed the concept of squares and circles and proceeded to make posters for both triangles and rectangles, as you can see over here. And again, it was important to clarify to the students the important aspects of each shape. For example, a rectangle has 2 sides that are longer and 2 sides that are shorter. And this is what was able to distinguish them from a square. And triangles have 3 sides as well, but the triangle does not need to have 3 equal sides. And this was explained to the children very carefully by showing them different types of triangles, as you can see over here, and still explaining to them that these are still triangles even though they do not have equal sides. Again, we use different songs to help explain the different types of objects and aspects of spheres and cubes to the students. Again, as this was a foundation class, ICT and the use of songs really help engage the students in a way that the students were able to enjoy their learning. So we discussed aspects of the sphere, such as it is rounded, it has no sides, and it looks like different types of things in the real world, such as a soccer ball, a basketball, the sun, or the moon. And for cubes as well, how it has 8 different corners and 6 different faces, and how it looks like a building, a puzzle block or a Rubik's Cube, an ice block, and a house as well. As with shapes,
We made posters for the solids as well, collectively as a class. Each poster displayed the name, the characteristics, and what it resembles, as well as what was previously discussed. After the poster activities, they were given the opportunity to make their own shape monster on paper. The task required them to make a monster out of just the shapes, and the students needed to tell me what shapes they used in their monster. After going through the past few lessons learning about shapes and solids, this would test their ability to recognize each shape and their characteristics.
The fourth lesson reviewed all the shapes and solids that they had learned, and their task now was to make a car from boxes and other different shapes. This lesson was more focused towards letting the student drive, no pun intended, their own learning. Although they could use any shapes, the idea was that the students had to understand that shapes can be found anywhere, even on cars, and for them to be able to recognize and identify them on their own car. So, what new learning theories did I take from this project? Well, at the very beginning, and in particular because this is foundation class, inquiry-based learning is definitely prevalent in the classroom. The lessons were very much based on learning through questions and asking the students questions. Asking them questions so that they can pique their interest and to cause them to think and to draw out the learning and the skill of the students so that they can be drivers of their own learning. What I learned from this ICT project is that ICT has its benefits for the visual learners, but it does not have to be the bread and butter of the classroom, as not all students learn effectively with ICT. After reflecting, I had an enjoyable time learning how the students learn and learning how to incorporate ICT into the classroom. The students enjoyed their lessons and my mentor gave me sound and good and positive feedback. As for myself, finding out the learning process about making lesson plans that incorporate ICT was a bit of a challenge, but it was a lesson learned well. I was able to appreciate the capabilities as well as the limitations of ICT in the classroom, and all in all, it was a very fulfilling experience.